Just north of Goldsboro, North Carolina, there is an old cemetery that most people have forgotten. Hidden among the weathered graves is a broken headstone, cracked almost completely in half and held together by rusty metal brackets. But there is something unusual about it. Carved at the top of the stone is the image of two hands locked in a handshake. Beneath it is a name, George Deans. And according to an old local legend, that handshake tells a terrifying story. In 1856, a 17-year-old girl named Rachel Vinson believed she had found the man she would spend the rest of her life with. His name was George Deans. George was 8 years older than Rachel, and she was completely in love with him. She dreamed about their wedding and imagined the life they would build together. But George didn't feel the same way. He had a reputation for chasing other women, and before long, Rachel discovered that he had been seeing several other girls behind her back. She was devastated. Still, Rachel couldn't bring herself to let him go. She told George how deeply she loved him and begged him to stop seeing the other women. She even told him that she would still marry him if he changed his ways. But George had no interest in saving their relationship. He ended it. And he did so without much sympathy for the girl whose heart he had just broken. Rachel was crushed. She became withdrawn and consumed by grief. According to the story, her sadness soon began affecting her health. Within weeks, she developed a severe fever. Her condition continued to deteriorate, and the young girl who had once dreamed of a wedding became weaker with every passing day. Eventually, Rachel seemed to lose all hope. Then, one day, she asked for George. When he came to her bedside, Rachel asked him to lean closer. She had something to tell him. In a quiet voice, she whispered, "I realize I can never have you in this world, but I shall claim you in the next." The following day, Rachel Vinson was dead. She was buried in the small cemetery near Goldsboro. George tried to forget what had happened. Life continued. And for almost a year, nothing strange happened. Until one Christmas night. George had been attending a Christmas party and was making his way home after drinking. His route took him directly past the cemetery where Rachel had been buried. As he walked past the graves, George noticed something strange. A thin, unnatural mist was rising from the cemetery. At first, he thought it was ordinary fog. But then the mist began moving. It drifted between the tombstones, and slowly came toward him. George stopped. The fog began to take shape. A human figure appeared inside it. A woman. And as the figure moved closer, George recognized the face. It was Rachel. The girl he had rejected. The girl who had died nearly a year earlier. George was terrified. He tried to move, but his body seemed frozen with fear. The apparition continued toward him. Then it reached out and grabbed his hand. George felt an intense cold spread through his body. Not the cold of winter. Something far worse. It was ice cold. And then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the apparition vanished. George was later found wandering along the road in a confused daze. But something was terribly wrong. His right hand hung motionless at his side. It was completely frozen. Over the following days, George began experiencing unbearable pain in the hand. Then it started to change. The hand slowly withered. The flesh shriveled. And eventually, it became almost useless, hanging helplessly from his arm. George never married. For the rest of his life, he remained alone. And according to the legend, he never forgot what happened that Christmas night. When George Deans eventually died, he was buried in the same cemetery as Rachel Vinson. But before his death, George supposedly left one final instruction in his will. He wanted a strange image carved into his gravestone. Two hands, locked together in an eternal handshake. One hand belonged to George. The other belonged to Rachel. And even today, the broken headstone is said to remain in that forgotten cemetery just north of Goldsboro. A reminder of a promise made by a dying girl. And a handshake that, according to legend, continued long after death. Because sometimes, the most terrifying thing about a ghost story isn't the question of whether the dead can return. It's wondering what happens when they keep their promises.